Some we have reached out to, others we have not reached out to. And because they continue to come, we thought it wise that we just have a press conference that will address the request once and for all. Like she said, this is relating to the COVID-19 allowance that related to the sit-down strike by teachers, so the laying down of tools by teachers. Let me say that when we opened schools in October 2020, we invited some of you to share the model that we had as a sector. This model was supposed to look at what needed to be done in our schools, including the related cost in doing what we wanted to do. As a sector, the policy requires that we have 46 students in a class. That's why you have 23 benches, seating 2 students per bench in a class. But when the COVID hit, the Ministry of Health and the World Organization, the Health Organization, WHO, brought in some protocols and regulations that we needed to observe because of COVID. And in that regard, schools were requested or required to reduce the class size from either 46 in a standard class, or in some cases where you have larger numbers, like in the Bundums, the Serakundas, to reduce those in the 50s and more to the same 23. When that happens, it means a normal class of 46 students will now be divided into 2. And any class that is 60 would be divided into 3. So therefore, you would need more teachers, more classroom, more teaching and learning materials to be able to do that. So when we did the model, initially, when we limit our class sizes to 23, there were 29 schools that would have been affected. So we came up with different methods. We came up with double shifting. We came up with alternating. Double shifting would mean that students will go to school from Monday to Friday. Some will go to school Monday to Friday in the morning, and the others will go Monday to Friday in the afternoon. But alternating is in the case where students will be required to go to either 3 days a week in some cases or 4 days a week in some other cases. But how that is done in terms of the number of days and which class goes 4 days or 3 days was left to the school administrators because they know the students that they want to prioritize. For example, whether the grade 12 they would prioritize or the grade 9s. That's what warranted that kind of modeling system. So we invited everybody, including all the stakeholders, and shared this. We floated it and said, anybody who has to go to school from Monday to Saturday because of COVID, we will pay you for the Saturday class. However, there were schools that would have the luxury of going to school Monday to Friday without problems. And that is because those schools' size are not as many students as the other. And that was across the country. When we rolled this out into the system, school administrators, based on the love for their students, decided to see how they also do what we call a catch-up plan, which we developed. What is this catch-up plan? You may recall that the 17th of March 2020, schools were closed until the 14th of October and the 18th of October when they were reopened. So that gap that the students lost, which translated to 265 contact hours, that was what resulted or warranted that catch-up plan, so that the time they lost during that period could be recovered for them, more especially for the students who are on examination class, and these I refer to grade 9 and grade 12. So that was rolled. At the end of the year, we requested for the data from the schools and the regions to see who has taught from Monday to Friday to Saturday because of COVID, so that they could be paid as we promised them. The data we got, we processed it, and teachers were paid by the December salary payment. However, there were some data that were still remaining because of the adjustment that some head teachers or administrators decided to do in helping their students. So that data came late, and when it came, it was subjected to verification, as we did in the past, for them to be paid. The reason for verification is to ensure that people who taught between this period or on Saturdays are paid appropriately. For example, if a particular school only taught on Saturday for 2 weeks, and another taught on Saturday for 1 month or 2 months, these teachers cannot be paid the same, can they? No. So we needed to verify that. So in January, we did the verification and processed the payment. Unfortunately, when the payment got to the payment point, there were some administrative observations that they had, and that challenged the payment for the month of January. When this was brought to the attention of our partners, it was difficult for them to understand and bear with us. And as a result, there were engagements, and we requested for time to be able to professionally and procedurally do the process that is required for the payments to be done. We couldn't meet their time line as they wanted, and that's what led to the sit-down strike. So in short, just for you to understand what led to that sit-down strike. The ministry has always been committed to ensuring that the plight of teachers is looked at and addressed. And that can be seen from the different interventions that the ministry has done over the last year or more. So in brief, this is what happened, and we thought we needed to share with you so that it is not us being said in some quarters that every teacher was to be paid. No, it is not us. We were selective in payment. No, it is not us. We paid some and left others. No, it is because we pay as the data comes and as we verify that those data for us to be able to pay accordingly. These are public funds, and they must be accountable for. And as a sector, we needed to do that process. I think without much in summary, that's what happened. But just as an update, When we showed commitment in paying, last week we were able to pay the remaining teachers as per the data we got. We were able to pay them. And as a result of that, the union, the Gambia Teachers Union, uplifted the ban on the strike, and classes have resumed in earnest. But let me use this opportunity to say that we have always, in the past, which some of you can bear, commended our teachers for the work they've been doing. You may recall when this COVID hit, some teachers, especially in provinces, developed some hubs to support their students. Some went the extra mile to teach all the week, just because they wanted to help. And we have always recognized that. We have always appreciated that. And we have always commended them for that, which is on record. So we do recognize the efforts of our teachers. And we have always worked also with the Gambia Teachers Union in the past. We have a renewed relationship. And we want to commend them for the resumption of class after the payment of the other balance that was there. But notwithstanding, I also want to use this forum to say and appeal to my teachers and say, if there is anyone that is erroneously left out, or who thinks he or she has taught and should have been paid and has not been paid, I request that they channel their correspondence to their head teachers, to the regional office, and even to GTU, so that we could compile those, review them, verify them, and pay them accordingly if there is any, just to ensure that there is smooth teaching and learning in our schools.
Thank you.
It's out of this particular strike issue, but I also want to use the opportunity to say there was also something on the new pay scale, which I want to talk about. That the new pay scale is being developed by PMO, and it's being worked on daily basis before its implementation in July. But let me say, in the previous pay scales, there is none that has been implemented without hitches. A new pay scale will always be implemented with some hitches. We are not anticipating that this one will follow the same pattern, but at least we need to draw reference from the past. But in the event that happens and some of our teachers are affected, I will request that they follow due process by bringing up their complaint through their heads, through the regional office, and also through GTU, so that it could be quickly addressed within the first 3 months of its implementation for the smooth running of the sector. On that note, I want to thank you and say I appreciate your coming, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pierce. I don't want to add anything as yet as to what he has said. You've heard him very clearly. The allowance is not meant for every teacher. You need to get that very clear, because there was a model that was presented, and we have different categories of schools. And because we have different categories of schools, obviously their mode of operation will also differ. So therefore, if you were a teacher who is operating in what we call alternative, it means you have number of days that you go to school, and then you allow your colleague to go the other days while you stay at home. If you are working on Saturday, but the 3 days you were working on happen to be a Saturday, you're not entitled to this allowance. We want to get it very clear, because you are the eyes and the ears of the nation. So once it is clear here, we're sure it is clear everywhere. So he has made it very clear. Those who were involved have been paid accordingly because of data. If your data is not here, how can we pay you? That is very, very important. So the floor is open. We've got a lot of directors here who were involved in whatever, in developing these models and in the administration of all these things. Therefore, please announce your name and let us hear your question.
And the media house you come
Yeah, and the media house you come from. Yes, thank you. That's very important. Yes.
Yes, my name is Mungu Kajiga. I work at QTV as a reporter. My question will go to Mr. Manley. Talking about the COVID-19 hours, which we are supposed to be paid to the teachers. First, how did we get into this situation? Because it could have been avoided. You are affected, I am affected, and somebody is affected because we all have our kids, our brothers and sisters who go to school on a daily basis. So if there is an industrial action by teachers going to classes and teach, it will affect everybody. How did we get into this situation?
Okay.
Thank
You
you.
want to answer it, or somebody else wants to answer?
No. My question is that
All right, thank you very much. I think in my submission, I actually touched on that, but let me re-echo again. Like I said, we only started processing the payment for the COVID allowance in December, so that we have a full year. That was the close of the year before the other financial year started. So we requested for the data in October, November from schools through their regional directorates. Like I said, there were some schools that had their data intact and they submitted and they have been paid. However, in between, there were others that were claiming that they too should be paid because they were participating. And when their data came after the first one, we needed to verify that to ensure that everyone is paid appropriately. We wouldn't, as a sector, underpay or overpay anybody. Then it brings chaos. Remember, we do not have the luxury of requesting for any amount of funds. It was based on something that was programmed and planned. And what we have to do must fit within that was budgeted. So in the second batch, like I said, it was processed. The data we received was processed up to payment point, which is outside the sector. And there were some challenges at that point. And before those challenges could be resolved, we were already in 2022. The books of government were closed in December 2021. So even if we had wanted to pay at that time, we couldn't have, because the process of government payment has been closed. So this could have only been done in January, which we did in January. But at payment point, there were some challenges at that point. And it could not be resolved within the given time, like I said earlier on, by the teachers' union. And that's what resulted to the situation you are referring to.
Thank you, Daniel.
Like Ms. Kotunyma, perhaps that's your observation, that we were late in engaging you. But if the media is fair with Mobse, I think you would appreciate that we have never left you in anything we do. We are not people who shy away from media. We have always invited you. But there is always a step to everything and a level in which everyone should be involved. We had an engagement with the GTU, hoping that all of this would be paid or done within the given time. When the first one was paid and the other one was still not being paid, we engaged them again. But the challenge was when they said every teacher must be paid, who is that teacher that needs to be paid? We need to ascertain that. And that will take time. And in doing so, their time that they give elapsed. And that's what led to it. It's not because we did not involve the media, no. If we had ascertained that, because we wanted to know every teacher. When they tell us every teacher, who is every teacher? Because for us, those who should be paid are those that were programmed and planned by the model. What I said in my submission, however, there were others who took it upon themselves, who came out with good initiatives. My teachers came out with some good initiatives. We recognized it, we appreciated it, we commended them, and in that way we reconsidered also how do we pay them for those efforts. But that would take time. That's what led to it. It's not because we do not want to invite you or we invited you late. Thank you.
Okay.
We had all those three checks just as a way of verifying. So it's just not the data we collected. It was all from these collection points.
Mr. Ba,
Yeah.
you want to react to this is
Thank you.
Mr. Ba, the Regional Director, Region 1.
Yes. Thank you very much. We appreciate your question. And just to put things in a clear perspective, Region 1 particularly was not late in their submission. And we did submit. But as Pierce rightly says, the data has to be looked at. And it has posed some challenges, actually, when we were looking at the data. The other aspect is we set in two sets of data. One was for the public schools, which we have to provide the employment numbers of teachers where they are going to be paid directly to their accounts. The other set of teachers was those in the grant-aided schools, that is the missions and senior secondary schools that are on board, whose teachers don't have employment numbers. That posed a challenge to accounts to pay directly to them. So those were some of the schools that were late to be paid. But the data was available because they have to be paid now to their school accounts, then the schools now to pay the individual teachers. Those poses a problem to some of the payments, but not necessarily the data was not there, right? So I know my colleagues in all the other regions, we do have some changes. Some teachers were left out. Even today, I'm receiving some who are saying they were left out and the head teachers are writing to that effect and bringing it. And we are collating all these things. So it's not a question of data was not collected. Data was collected, and the ones that we had from the schools, we submitted that. But still now we are having, because these are money issues. Some were in the schools, they participated in this and left to the university, others are at the college, others left the public schools, are in private schools. They are coming now to claim that they were in the schools in those days. So these are all things that we have to put together. So if we cannot say that the data was not there. The data is there, but the data cannot be as clean as we want it. And any data that comes, we have to look at it properly before we submit. As Pierce rightly said, these are public funds, and we have to be careful what we do, because we don't want to overpay or underpay anybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ba. Thank you, Director.
Because what we are experiencing at the moment is as a result of finding out the impact and trying to ameliorate by actually engaging the teachers to support in the catch-up program. Yes, it is a week now, that about a week, exactly 4 days, that the children were not actually interacting with their teachers in terms of getting their lessons as normal. What we did as a sector, we held an emergency SMT meeting, and all the regional directors were summoned to go back to their regions and establish the number of schools that were actually taking part in the sit-down strike from day one up to the moment, so that we will know at the beginning, at the commencement of lessons, we will be able to tell how much time the students have lost. It will be hard to establish the impact as at the time that the sit-down strike will cease to take place, because impact will take some time before we are able to establish it. But we will be able to tell how many hours that the children have lost as at the time that the teachers commence the sit-down strike up to the time of resumption. And then we will again put up better strategies this time as to establish how these teachers will be able to make up for the lost time. And I believe this time it's not going to repeat, to say teachers are going back to teach as to a catch-up program for the 1 week lost that the students actually went through. We will develop our strategies and work with the teachers and agree with them as to how we will make up for this time. I think this is not going to be a repetition again for this COVID, the COVID catch-up time.
Thank you, Director. M&E.
How many schools were affected?
No, we wouldn't know yet.
No, wait.
Okay, so there was no assessment done?
No, that
No.
Can you do an assessment?
You did not hear me well?
Yes.
He said there was a meeting, right? So I wanted to know.
And then after the meeting, all directors were asked to go back to their regions. You're not talking about Banjul and Serekunda.
Yes,
alone.
Banna.
I understand. What I just want to know, which schools were affected, and
Yes.
you don't know the number of schools that are affected. That is why I'm asking now. Is that established? Do you know?
PS is coming to answer to that question.
In short, I can tell you that all schools were affected. In context, all public schools were affected apart from the private schools. But we need the regional directors to give us that by the end of this week, because they will collect the data. So we don't want to rush again, and then we miss our target, to miss how much each school has missed. Each school actually missing, let's say, the number of hours that each school missed. So we want the directors to give us the actual data that they got from the regions, and then we'll be able to work that out. So it's not like we're going to rush to tell you X number of schools in Region 1, Region 2, up to Region 6 have missed. But we know that all the public schools were affected. So that we can establish at the moment. But the impact assessment you're talking about, impact takes a longer time. I don't know if you're referring to impact as to the effect, and yeah, I think the effect is what you're looking at. And we will be able to establish that by the end of this week.
Can I say something?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Can I just further consolidate what Mr. Gomez, please. Mr. Gomez was saying? We were tasked as regional directors to go back to our regions to engage our partners. And I'm sure all our all my regional colleagues went back to their regions and engaged the partners. We engaged the PTAs, we engaged the SMCs, the school management committees, we engaged the mothers clubs. The strike actually was revoked day before yesterday, I suppose, in the evening. And yesterday was supposed to be a school day. But the information did not filter down to every parent. Some of the parents were having their kids at home, believing that there is no teaching and learning in our schools, so they will not allow them to go and play only and sit down in the school. So they keep them. So we had challenges of parents understanding this and then allowing their kids to go back to school, because we wanted them all to be back to school yesterday. Unfortunately, the information did not filter down. So we invited all these structures. I had a meeting in my regional office with all the stakeholders, and we informed them that, well, the strike is over. We want the kids to go back to school immediately. Those who were supposed to go to afternoon shift yesterday should all report to their schools. They will find their teachers there. And then to further engage their colleagues, their parent colleagues, because they are representing the interests of parents in the schools, to inform their colleagues that the strike is over and their children can go back to school. We did this. And then also we encouraged some of our colleagues who are in the outer regions to use the community radios to talk to the communities. Because we have more, in the rural areas you have only public schools. Hardly you have a private school. Most of the schools are public. In Region 1 and 2, particularly Region 1 where you have the chunk of the private schools, who were actually going to school. But we have big public schools. So it's a challenge to all of us. We don't want to see the children outside. We want them to go back and learn. So that's why we are engaging our structures, actually. That is the effect, but not the impact. The effect is because of the strike, our kids are not going to school at the moment. We want them to go back. But the impact is is a long-term effect. It's just the long term.
Yeah.
So this is just what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Jai. PS, you want
Yes,
to react?
just to add, it's good you talked about the issue of impact. Impact is not something you do overnight. You must look at some variables to be able to conclude on impact.
Takes a long time.
But outside that, let me say when the strike was on, we also had our team of officers who were in the field. Apart from myself, there were officers who were out to observe, to look at some schools that were not going. Yes, the declaration says all public schools, but I can assure you not every public school had its tools down. It was just a few across the country. So that is being compiled as we talk. The data that is collected during those visits is being compiled, and as we get those from the regions, we will compile everything to be able to do and to analyze that and be able to know, yes, this is the impact. So that's what I just wanted to add to what they have said in response to your question.
Thank you very much.
That was an allegation that PSG gave a statement, video interview with Standard newspaper, that, and I quote, and they said, they have not been agitating about teaching and learning materials in schools. These are their personal monies that are left with them as individuals, which doesn't go down well with teachers. If yes, you are the who say, can you clarify? If no, is it in their domain to go and sit down strike in case these things are not available in school?
Thank you very much. Ordinarily, I wouldn't add personal, but let me say that I think what we would expect from journalists is to have the two sides of the story. What was the question of the journalist?
No, I just saw the allegation.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yes,
That's what I'm saying. So it's an imbalanced reporting. The journalists ask whether they have been agitating or they have sat down for the non-availability of teaching materials. Have you ever heard of teachers sitting down for that? No. No. So what could I have said? I have never heard of teachers doing that. And besides, the agitation that I said relates to the strike is all about the COVID-19, and these are monies owed to them. These are monies that we promised them to pay. And that's exactly what I said. I have never heard of it, but this is monies that is owed to them. It's their monies, and which we recognize that they own the money. And that was why we are making every effort to pay every teacher. Even from this, like the director has said, if there are still complaints of people who have not been paid, we'll receive that data, verify it, and who is due for payment will appropriately pay you. And it's good you brought this because I want fair reporting so that you capture the sides of the story. Otherwise, you are now trying to discourage some of us from even talking to you. I'm sure that's why you don't even get interviews from other people, because it's good to report fairly. This is the second time with Paradise. There was a time, no, sorry, not Paradise, Standard. And if they continue, they will be not getting interview. I want us to be fair. I am just even told, I don't even know about it. Somebody just brought it to my attention. And let me say that I am one person that owns up to everything that he does. If I offend you, not even any teacher, but you as an individual, I will apologize. I'll take full responsibility. I'm not the one that thinks, no, because I'm human. You are human. I can err. And if I err, I will take full responsibility and apologize. But let us put things in perspective so that we have two sides of the story, for one to be able to interpret what is said. But it's becoming an unfortunate situation. And it's not desirable. We don't desire that. I've had it. And let me just say that even this COVID, I have not even paid my staff who were out in the field as well. They are not even there. Some of us were going into classes when this struck. all the way to up country, particularly my communication unit, but I have not paid them. But the teachers are very dear to us, and I am repeating again for purpose of emphasis. These are teachers who demonstrated commitment to teach our students. Some of them devised means, extra means to support the students. We recognize that, we appreciated and supported it. And we have different ways of rewarding our teachers, which we have started. If you look at the plight of the teachers over the last 2 years, you will see a difference. We are committed to ensuring that the teachers are taken well care of. That is our interest. But we'll do it within the possible means. And I want all of us to appreciate that. We cannot be enemies. They implement our policy. So we cannot be enemies. The teachers implement what we design here as policymakers. So if we do not support them, it means we are planning to fail, because the policy will not be implemented in the regions. There was a female teacher in CRR who developed a WhatsApp platform for her students, sharing message during that time. It got to us, we appreciated. We did our own reward to that particular teacher in our own way, and many other teachers. So the teachers cannot be enemies to us. There is no way that as a sector we'll hate them. They implement it. We are out and about for them. And I want to just bring that clear.
Thank you. Thank you very much, PS. I think that is very clear. Any other